When KFC opened in Jack Ma's hometown, 24 people applied for jobs. 23 were accepted. Jack was the only one rejected. It wasn't his first rejection either. He applied for dozens of positions that got turned down from every single one. Instead of giving up, Jack taught himself English and dreamed bigger. In 1999, he convinced 17 friends to help him launch an online marketplace from his small apartment. That startup was Alibaba. At first, nobody believed a Chinese schoolteacher could build a global e-commerce company. Investors laughed him out of meeting rooms. He struggled to find any funding, but Jack persisted. He grew Alibaba through sheer determination, empowering small businesses to sell online. The platform exploded into one of the world's largest companies, and Jack Ma became one of the richest entrepreneurs on the planet, all from a man who couldn't even get hired at KFC. He once said, "Never give up. Today is hard, tomorrow will be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine." If you've been here before, drop a hashtag Believe in the comments below so I can feature you here in a future video. And if you're new, welcome to Believe Nation, the only channel that helps you believe in yourself daily, one video at a time. Believe. Early rejections and perseverance. Jack Ma's journey began with failure after failure. As a young man in China, he struggled academically and even failed his college entrance exam twice before finally passing on the third try. After college, he faced an onslaught of job rejections. Reportedly, 30 different jobs turned him down. He tried to become a police officer, but out of the 5 applicants, 4 were accepted, and Jack was the only one rejected. He even applied to KFC when it opened in his city. 24 people applied, and 23 got hired, everyone except Jack. To top it off, he applied to Harvard University 10 times and was rejected each and every time. Most people, they would have been crushed by a fraction of these setbacks, but Jack did not give up or let rejection define him. Each no gave him extra motivation to keep going. He later said that we have to get used to rejection and keep moving forward. This mindset, viewing rejection as a stepping stone rather than like it's the end of the world, became the backbone of Jack's success story. Learning English and seeing a bigger world. One of the first ways Jack turned adversity into opportunity was by teaching himself English. Growing up in Hangzhou, China, he was determined to learn English even though it wasn't easy for him. As a teenager, he would wake up early and ride his bicycle for 40 minutes to the city's hotel district every single morning just to find foreign tourists to talk to. For 9 years, he acted as a free tour guide for travelers, practicing English with anyone willing to chat. This dedication paid off. Not only did he become fluent, but he also gained a window into the wider world. In fact, one of those tourists gave him the nickname Jack, since his real name, Ma Yun, was hard to pronounce. Through these conversations and friendships, young Jack's mindset expanded. He began to dream beyond the limited opportunities he saw around him in China. An Australian family he befriended even invited him abroad, and that trip opened Jack's eyes to possibilities beyond his humble background. Jack eventually graduated with an English degree and became an English teacher in Hangzhou. His starting salary was very low, around $12 a month by some accounts, but he was passionate about teaching and learning. Still, he never lost the urge to do something bigger. His exposure to Western ideas and fluent English skills gave him the confidence to think globally, a rare perspective at the time. Jack often says this period of learning and broadening his horizons was really important to him. It taught him to embrace new ideas, to communicate more boldly, and to believe in himself even when he was just a nobody in the eyes of his employers. The spark of an idea, discovering the internet. Jack Ma's turning point came in 1995 when he encountered the internet for the first time. At the time, the internet was almost unknown in China. Jack traveled to the United States as a translator, and there a friend showed him the World Wide Web. The experience was life-changing for him. One famous story recounts how Jack searched for beer online out of curiosity. He found lots of information about American and European beer, but to his surprise, no information about China or Chinese beer. Sensing a lack of opportunity, Jack searched for general information about China and again saw nothing. In that moment, he realized that the internet could be a great equalizer for his country. Determined to put China on the online map, Jack and a friend created a simple website listing China-related information, basically an online directory. The site was very basic, and Jack called it ugly, but they put it up anyway. What happened next amazed him. Just hours after launching the site, emails started pouring in from people around the world wanting to know more about China and about him. Jack was stunned that in a short time, the internet connected him in China to opportunities around the world. This was his light bulb moment. He later said, "This was when I realized that the internet had something great to offer." So, motivated by the discovery, Jack started his first company, China Pages. It was an early Chinese internet directory for businesses. He had virtually no technology background and had to borrow money to get started, but he dove in anyway. China Pages earned a little money and taught Jack his first entrepreneurial lessons. But more importantly, it proved to him that China could engage with the world through the internet. The business wasn't a huge success. It eventually got overshadowed by a government-run competitor, but Jack gained valuable experience. He learned how to build websites, he learned how to persuade others to see his vision, and he learned how the emerging internet could empower small businesses. That spark was lit for now something much bigger for Jack. Building Alibaba from a small apartment. By 1999, Jack was ready to go all in on his biggest idea yet. He convinced a group of former students and friends to join him in creating an online marketplace that would link Chinese suppliers with buyers around the world. Jack was now 35 years old, armed with conviction and the few connections that he had. The team, 17 friends co-founding alongside Jack, gathered in his modest apartment in Hangzhou to start the company. They decided to call it Alibaba, inspired by the tale of Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. Jack liked that it was a more globally recognized name and the idea of open sesame for small businesses. And in that tiny apartment, Jack delivered a very impassioned speech laying out his vision. He told his team that China's internet business could compete globally and that our competitors are not in China, but in America's Silicon Valley. That was a pretty bold statement at the time. Remember, Jack was an English teacher by trade, not a tech expert or some seasoned CEO. In fact, he didn't even know how to write a single line of code and had never run a big company. Many people thought it was laughable that someone with no technical background could start an internet company. But Jack had other strengths: charisma, vision, belief. He saw in himself not a programmer, but a leader and a dreamer who could rally skilled people to join his cause. So it was just 500,000 yuan, which is about $60,000 in pooled funds as startup capital. Jack and his small team got to work on Alibaba.com. Their goal was pretty straightforward, but ambitious: help small Chinese businesses sell their products online to the world. Jack was passionate about enabling the little guys, the small entrepreneurs, to find customers beyond their local markets. This mission would also help bring China's economy into the internet age. And those early days, they were pretty hard on Jack. The team worked out of Jack's apartment, often using homemade furniture. Resources were pretty scarce, and at first, even convincing Chinese businesses to sign up on Alibaba was really hard. The internet was new and trust was pretty low. Jack had to personally be an evangelist for the idea that online commerce could be trustworthy and valuable for them. He was reaching for a dream that not many other people could even understand at the time. Also, if you want to take real action after this video, I made a free worksheet just for you. It covers the top lessons from today, gives you space to write your biggest takeaways, and helps you build a simple action plan. It's 100% free. Just click the link in the description below to go grab it. I'll see you there. Today is hard, tomorrow will be worse. Overcoming challenges. So just when Alibaba started gaining some traction, huge challenges emerged. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, many internet startups were failing as the dot-com bubble burst open. Money was drying up. Jack Ma, ever the optimist, kept his team motivated. He told them that even if the hype was fading, the dream of the internet won't burst, meaning he firmly believed the internet's long-term potential was real, even though there was short-term skepticism. Still, Alibaba needed money to survive. Jack went overseas looking for investors, but when Western venture capitalists literally laughed in his face, he was actually laughed out of Wall Street offices when he pitched his idea of a Chinese e-commerce site. No one believed that a small Chinese company led by a former school teacher could ever compete globally. But Jack finally found some believers. In 1999, just as Alibaba was nearing a breaking point, Goldman Sachs invested $5 million, and shortly after, SoftBank, which was led by Japanese investor Masayoshi Son, invested another $20 million. This was a huge turning point. $25 million in total funding gave Alibaba the lifeline it needed to continue to weather the storm and keep growing. Jack often says that perseverance is the key. If he had given up after those early rejections, the lack of funding, Alibaba would never have made it. So instead, he kept knocking on doors until one finally opened. With this new funding, Alibaba survived the early 2000s and started to thrive. By 2002, the company finally became profitable, but the challenges didn't end there. In 2003, eBay, the American e-commerce giant, entered the Chinese market by acquiring a local website. They were a global heavyweight with deep pockets, and suddenly Alibaba, especially with its new consumer-focused platform, was an underdog fighting against Goliath. Many predicted Alibaba would be crushed, but not Jack. He doubled down on his understanding of Chinese consumers and small sellers. Instead of charging fees like eBay, Jack made it free for users, which attracted millions of sellers and buyers who preferred a no-fee marketplace. He also introduced Alipay, which was an escrow-based payment system to build trust in online transactions. So buyers' payments were basically held safely until they confirm receipt of the goods, which addressed the trust issue that foreign companies didn't quite understand. Jack's intimate knowledge of his home market and his customers first philosophy was starting to pay off. And over a few years, he overtook eBay in China. eBay was forced to retreat the company in 2006, defeated by this small local startup that just wanted it more. And a great moment came when eBay offered to buy Alibaba's to stop the competition. Jack refused to sell. He was in this for the long haul, not for some quick payout. Instead, he partnered with Yahoo. And in 2005, they invested a $1 billion stake in Alibaba, giving Alibaba even more fuel to grow. But through all these fights and battles, Jack Ma's guiding principle was to never give up and keep adapting. He famously said, "Today is hard, tomorrow will be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine." And he lived that quote. During the hardest times, when no one was believing in him, when he was running out of money or facing a giant competitor, Jack kept faith that if he kept going, the hard days and the worst days would eventually become good. And he was right. Jack Ma's triumph and legacy. So in the end, Jack Ma's crazy dream became an astonishing reality. Alibaba grew from that tiny apartment startup into one of the world's largest e-commerce companies. By the 2010s, it was a dominant force, not just in China, but globally. It offers services from online retail to cloud computing and digital payments. In 2014, Alibaba made global headlines with its record-breaking IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. Investors who once laughed at him now scrambled to buy a piece of Alibaba. The company raised around $25 billion in its IPO, which was the largest stock offering ever at the time. The former jobless man who couldn't even get hired at KFC had built a company so valuable that it shattered world records. Jack Ma instantly became one of the richest people on the planet, and his net worth was soaring into the tens of billions of dollars. But beyond the wealth, Jack was now hailed as this visionary entrepreneur on a world stage. He proved that an ordinary person, a man who started as a poor, academically average kid, could change the world through his perseverance and his vision. Alibaba's success also empowered millions of small business owners in China and beyond, fulfilling Jack's original mission to help the little guys benefit from the internet. Jack Ma's story has some fairy tale-like qualities, but he never forgets how it started, with rejection and resilience. Even after his success, he remains humble about all of his abilities. He often says that he was not a tech genius or a Superman, just someone who is willing to keep trying and learn from mistakes. In 2019, Jack stepped down as Alibaba's chairman on his 55th birthday to focus on his philanthropy and education projects, returning to his teacher roots. It's inspiring that after achieving so much, he still chose to give back and help others reach their potential, which kind of became a full circle moment for someone who began as a modest teacher with big dreams. So here's the moral of Jack's story for me. His journey from repeated rejection to crazy success shows that anything is possible if you don't give up. His life shows that you need to have grit and vision and self-belief. He faced more rejection early on than most of us might in a lifetime, but he kept pushing forward. He once said, "If you don't give up, you still have a chance. Giving up is the greatest failure." Jack really lived that advice. He met every failure with a new attempt to go again, every no with a new idea and way to get around it. And eventually, the man who couldn't land a simple job created thousands of jobs for others and built a company that changed the world. Imagine if Jack Ma had given up after that KFC rejection or the Harvard rejections. The world would never have heard of Alibaba, and Jack would just be another unhappy man who quit on his dreams. Instead, because he kept going, he reaped the sunshine he talked about and proved to all of us that we can too. And congratulations, you're one video closer to who you're meant to be. Believe. Now let's learn the incredible story of Suichiro Honda. Suichiro Honda, the founder of Honda Motors, was rejected by Toyota, lost his factory in World War II, and had an earthquake destroy everything he built. He was broke, humiliated, and at rock bottom. But instead of giving up, he turned failure into the fuel for his greatest success. Honda was obsessed with engines. As a young man, he spent years designing a new piston, believing it would change the industry. He took his invention to Toyota, expecting them to buy it, but they rejected him, saying it wasn't good enough. Most people would have quit, but Honda went back, redesigned it, and tried again. Toyota rejected him a second time. He was crushed. He had put everything into this project, and now he had nothing to show for it. Still, he refused to quit. He borrowed money, built a factory, and started producing his own parts. Just when things were finally looking up, World War II hit. His factory was bombed twice. All his hard work gone. But he rebuilt. Then before he could recover, a massive earthquake struck and leveled everything he had left. Honda was left with nothing. No factory, no money, no hope. But instead of feeling sorry for himself, he found a new way forward. With Japan struggling after the war, people needed cheap transportation. He took a simple bicycle and attached a tiny motor to it. That small idea, it changed everything. People loved it. He started making more. Soon his little motorized bikes were selling all over Japan. That business became Honda Motors, which grew into the biggest motorcycle company in the world and later one of the most successful car manufacturers in history. Soichiro Honda was rejected, bankrupt, and lost everything, but he never stopped. If he had quit, there would be no Honda today. When life knocks you down, will you stay down or will you rise up and build something even greater? You could say Suichiro Honda was born with grease under his nails. He entered the world in 1906 in a tiny Japanese village, the son of a blacksmith who also fixed bicycles. As a child, Suichiro helped his father's bike repair shop, mesmerized by gears and spokes instead of school books. In fact, he wasn't much for traditional education. He once forged his family seal out of a rubber bicycle pedal to fake his report card approval. It worked for Honda since his name was symmetrical, but not for his friends with different names. That little mischief got him caught, but it shows you something. Even as a kid, Suichiro was resourceful and bold, unafraid to hack the system to get what he wanted. What he wanted most was machines. As a toddler, he saw his first automobile roll through his village and he was spellbound. He said the oil smelled like perfume to him. He even borrowed his dad's bicycle to chase an airplane demonstration once. He was obsessed with anything mechanical. If you've ever felt that burning passion for something at a young age, you know how Suichiro felt. And if you haven't found your passion yet, take a cue from him. Follow your curiosity relentlessly. At 15 years old, armed with nothing but that passion, Suichiro left his village and headed to Tokyo to find work as a mechanic. Imagine a teenager with no formal education, no money, just a dream to work with cars. He saw an ad for a job at an auto shop called Art Shokai and wrote them a letter asking for an apprenticeship, even though they weren't advertising for one. Who does that? Someone hungry to learn. And it worked. They took him on. So ask yourself, would you have the guts to cold call your way into an opportunity? Honda did. That bold move at 15 set the foundation for everything to come. At Art Shokai in the 1920s, Suichiro thrived. He swept floors and fetched tools at first, but he soaked up knowledge like a sponge. He became a skilled mechanic known for clever fixes and crazy work ethic. His boss, Yuzo Sakakibara, was so impressed that he let young Honda help build a racing car from scratch. And get this, Soichiro built a race car with a salvaged engine that broke the speed record in Japan at the time, over 100 miles per hour. He even drove it in a race. That fearless need for speed was already in his blood. Unfortunately, in 1936, he crashed in a race and nearly died, injuring his eye. That crash ended his driving days, but not his racing spirit. We'll see how racing comes back into his story later on. By his early 30s, Suichiro Honda had learned all he could at the garage. He had a vision. He wanted to start his own company and make his own products. How many 30-year-olds do you know with a confidence to start a manufacturing business from scratch? This is where his real entrepreneurial journey kicks off. And trust me, it almost ended as soon as it began. In 1937, Suichiro Honda took the leap. He invested all of his savings, about $3,200, into a small factory to mass-produce piston rings, which were a critical engine part. He was betting everything on his ability to make a tiny piece of metal better than anyone else. His plan was to sell these piston rings to Toyota, the big car company. It did not go as planned. In fact, it was a disaster. After months of work, he delivered his first batch of piston rings to Toyota, and they rejected almost all of them. Imagine the moment. You've poured your heart, your soul, your life savings into a product, and the customer says, "These are junk." Out of 50 rings, only 3 met Toyota's quality standard. Another account says he made thousands of rings and only a few dozen were usable. Either way, almost 90 to 99% of his work was a failure. Can you imagine how crushing that could be? Honda was heartbroken and humiliated. He literally lost a Toyota contract, and with it, his hopes for a successful business seemed to crumble. Now, most people at this point would quit. They'd say, well, I tried, I failed, time to find a stable job. And here's where Suichiro Honda shows the mindset that you as an entrepreneur need to have. He refused to give up. Instead of quitting, he decided to learn from the failure and come back stronger. Remember this the next time you fail. Success represents the 1% of your work, which results from the 99% that is called failure. Suichiro Honda said that, and he lived it. He understood that each failure was telling him something. In this case, it told him he needed more knowledge. So he went back to school, literally. Honda enrolled in a technical school to study metallurgy, the science of metals, so he could figure out why his piston rings were too brittle or too soft. By day, he ran his little factory. By night, he was hitting the books. For 2 years, he experimented, studied, and improved the manufacturing process. And it paid off. By 1939, he had mastered the process and his piston rings were finally good enough. Toyota gave him a contract and his factory began supplying piston rings not only to Toyota, but also to the Japanese military for aircraft. His business, Tokai Seiki, grew to employ over 2,000 workers at its peak. Think about that. He went from catastrophic failure to running a 2,000 employee company because he didn't quit. He treated failure as feedback, not finale. This is failing forward in action. What can you learn from here? Persistence. The science backs it up. Research from the University of Pennsylvania shows that grit, passion, and perseverance is a better predictor of success than talent or IQ. Suichiro Honda's grit pulled him through. He literally turned failure into fuel. He once said, instead of being afraid of the challenge and failure, be afraid of avoiding the challenge and doing nothing. In other words, the only real failure is not trying. Suichiro's piston ring venture finally found success, but just as things were looking up, the world turned upside down. War broke out. Suichiro Honda's company was humming along, supplying Toyota and others, but then World War II escalated. Japan was drawn into war, and by 1944, Suichiro's factory became a target. Bombs rained down, and an American B-29 air raid leveled his main plant to rubble. If that wasn't enough, in 1945, a massive earthquake struck Japan and destroyed his second factory. In less than a year, everything he'd built, years of effort, all that persistence was reduced to smoking ruins and twisted metal. Imagine standing in front of your business, the place you poured your sweat and blood into, and seeing it literally collapse in a pile. How would you feel? Most of us would be devastated. Suichiro Honda certainly was in shock. He later said he had no interest in rebuilding the piston ring business for a third time. And can you blame him? He'd been through failure, recovery, success, then utter destruction. This was rock bottom. So what did he do? He didn't immediately jump back into entrepreneurship. In fact, Honda sold the salvageable remains of his factory to Toyota for 450,000 yen, just to have something to start anew. Then he took a break. A really long break by his standards. He spent a year basically in reflection and recuperation. He even went back to college for a bit and studied engineering more, though he never did get a formal degree. Suichiro was now an engineer without a company, without a degree, and nearly without hope. But this wasn't where the story ends, because remember, the day you stop dreaming is the day you die. And Suichiro Honda was not done dreaming. His homeland Japan was also in ruins from the war, and in those ruins, new opportunities were emerging. Necessity is the mother of invention, and Japan needed inventions. The people needed basic transportation to rebuild their lives in a shattered economy. Suichiro saw this need, and once again, he had a crazy idea. It's 1946. Japan is in chaos. Fuel is scarce, money is tight, people are literally rebuilding buildings and lives. Suichiro Honda, now 40 years old, is back in his hometown, figuring out his next move. One day he stumbles on a small 2-stroke engine, a tiny surplus military generator motor left from the war, just lying around. Most folks would see a hunk of junk. Suichiro saw opportunity. He famously recalled that moment as a moment of destiny, the spark that would ignite Honda Motor Company. He thought, what if I attach this little engine to a bicycle? People had been tinkering with motorized bikes elsewhere, but in Japan, it wasn't common. With gas in short supply, an efficient motorbike could be the perfect solution for easy transport. Soichiro got to work in his shack. He strapped the engine to a bicycle, used a hot water bottle as a makeshift fuel tank, seriously, and rigged a way to drive the wheel. The first prototype shook and rattled, but it worked. He gave it to his wife, Sachi, to test. She became the first test rider, putting up with oil splattering her clothes as she rode around town. People on the street must have thought they were seeing things. A woman cruising by without pedaling. And that was exactly Soichiro's plan. It got people talking. The little motorbike was loud, rough, and imperfect, but to war-weary citizens, it looked like freedom. Honda improved the design, and after his wife's feedback about the oil mess, and began building more. He had limited engines, about 500 of those surplus motors, so he refurbished every single one by hand before mounting it on a bicycle to sell. He refused to put out a shoddy product with his name on it. Even in desperate times, quality was king for him. That's a lesson. Your reputation is built on the quality you deliver, even when resources are scarce. Soon word spread about these motorized bicycles. They were cheap to run and helped people get around quickly. Buyers came from all over Japan to his hometown to get one. Suichiro Honda was back in business, not with piston rings this time, but with a whole new product born of necessity and imagination. By late 1946, Suichiro had officially founded the Honda Technical Research Institute, working out of a little wooden shack with a team of about a dozen men and a dream. That institute title is pretty grand for what basically was a glorified garage lab with an oil-stained floor. They worked day and night on improving the motorized bicycle. When the supply of surplus engines ran out, Honda knew they had to make their own engines to keep going. So in 1947, they developed a new 50cc engine, their first original Honda engine, and mounted it on a bicycle frame. This evolved into a complete motorbike known as the Type A, nicknamed the Bada Bada for the sound it made. It wasn't long before Honda's bikes were in demand across Japan. In 1948, just 2 years after starting from zero, Soichiro took the next big step. He incorporated Honda Motor Corporation as an official company. He knew he needed help to really grow, so he partnered with Takeo Fujisawa, a savvy businessman who joined him in 1949. This was crucial. Fujisawa handled the financial and marketing side, while Soichiro focused on engineering and production. Teamwork and knowing your strengths. This is another key entrepreneurial lesson. Honda was an engineering genius, but admittedly hated dealing with accounting. His wife would poke him about unpaid bills. By bringing in a partner who excelled in business, he freed himself to do what he loved most: innovate. So ask yourself, do you need a Fujisawa in your venture to complement your skills? With a solid team and a growing reputation, Honda Motor Co. took off. Soichiro and his engineers kept innovating new models. In 1949, they released the Type D Dream, Honda's first true motorcycle, complete with a sleek frame and 98cc engine. The name Dream says it all. It was Soichiro's dream becoming reality. But it wasn't easy. Post-war Japan was crawling with competition. About 200 other small companies were also making motorized bikes, all scrambling for a piece of a very poor market. Honda was just one player in a crowded field, an underdog by any measure. So how did Honda break away from the pack? Two things: product quality and smart strategy. Soichiro's engineering prowess meant his bikes steadily improved. They were reliable and got better each year. But equally important, Takeo Fujisawa helped craft brilliant marketing and distribution. They didn't just build good motorcycles, they found better ways to sell them. For example, by the mid-1950s, Honda's bikes had such a good reputation that word-of-mouth demand was exploding. Fujisawa organized a novel distribution system where Honda salesmen literally drove trucks of bikes from town to town across Japan, personally demoing and delivering to local dealers. They went to the customers rather than waiting in Tokyo. This boots-on-the-ground approach built relationships and trust. It was unconventional, but it worked. By 1955, just 7 years after starting, Honda became the #1 motorcycle manufacturer in Japan, leaving hundreds of rivals in the dust. Soichiro wasn't content with just domestic success. He had a bigger vision: to be a world-class manufacturer. He believed that to truly test your product, you should face the world's best on the racetrack. Remember that racing bug he had? It never went away. He famously said, "If Honda does not race, there is no Honda."
Racing was a way to push the limits of technology and prove your mettle. So in 1959, Honda became the first Japanese motorcycle maker to enter the legendary Isle of Man TT race, the toughest, most dangerous motorcycle race in the world at the time. They didn't win that year. In fact, they faced several technical failures in early attempts. But Honda's team learned and improved. By 1961, they took home their first trophies in the World Grand Prix circuit, shocking the established European makers. This relentless drive to compete and improve quickly translated into superior bikes for customers. By the early 1960s, Honda had begun exporting worldwide, and riders from Asia to Europe to America loved the affordable, robust Hondas. The real breakthrough in the West came with one iconic model, the Honda Super Cub. Introduced in 1958 as a simple 50cc bike for everyone, it became a global phenomenon. You probably know it by the later US slogan, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda." The Super Cub was cheap, reliable, and ridiculously fuel efficient, perfect for the post-war boom in affordable transport. It was so successful that it eventually became the most produced motor vehicle in history, with over 100 million Super Cubs built worldwide. Yes, 100 million. More than a Model T, more than a VW Beetle, any of them. That's the power of a great product combined with a great vision. Suichiro Honda wanted to empower ordinary people with mobility, and that vision drove the creation of a product that truly conquered the world. By 1959, Honda opened its first dealership in the United States, entering a market dominated by big bikes like Harley-Davidson. The American riders initially saw small Japanese bikes as a joke, but Honda's clever marketing, the Nicest People campaign in 1963, changed that image fast. Sales skyrocketed, and then an incredible thing happened. Honda motorcycles started outselling even the venerable Harley-Davidson in America and Triumph in England, beating the homegrown brands in their own backyards. Think about the magnitude of that. A little company from a war-torn country, a total underdog, overtook established giants on their home turf. By the mid-1960s, Honda was the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer and a household name. Suichiro Honda had gone global. How? By never sacrificing quality, by innovating in products and marketing, and by daring to go where others hadn't. He didn't stop at small bikes or local markets. He kept pushing outward. And as his motorcycle business reached the pinnacle, he set his sights on an even bigger dream, one that many thought was downright crazy: cars. Most people would ride the high of being the world's top motorcycle maker and play it safe. Not Suichiro Honda. In the late 1950s, as his bikes were conquering roads worldwide, he had another vision. He loved cars. Remember, he'd built and raced them in his youth, and he wanted Honda to build cars too. But Japan's government wasn't keen on a small motorcycle company jumping into the car industry. In fact, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry in Japan tried to block Honda from making cars in the early 1960s. They had a plan to consolidate the auto industry and didn't want new entrants. They effectively told Honda, stick to what you're good at, don't pursue cars. Well, telling Soichiro Honda to not do something was the surest way to fire him up. He once quipped, "If our team had to run a business analysis, we would never have ventured into the car business. I simply made a list of the weaknesses of the world's biggest car makers, and that list was quite long." In other words, he didn't care what the conventional wisdom was or what the government said. He saw an opportunity to do better than the existing car companies, and he went for it. The lesson is don't let naysayers or expert analysis kill your dream if you truly believe and have done your homework. Sometimes vision is greater than permission. Blocked from immediately entering the car market, Honda took a clever detour: racing. He decided to prove Honda's engineering prowess on the world stage by entering Formula One racing, the pinnacle of car racing. A bold move for a company that hadn't mass-produced a single car yet. They built a racing car, and by 1965, just a few years later, Honda won the Formula One Grand Prix in Mexico, beating the likes of Ferrari and Lotus. The racing success silenced a lot of doubters. It demonstrated that Honda's technology could compete with the best in the world. Over the next few years, they also dominated in Formula 2 racing with 11 consecutive wins. Soichiro was showing the world, we know engines, we know cars, and we're coming. By the late 1960s, Honda got the green light to mass-produce cars. Soichiro's first production car models, like the tiny Honda N360 and the sporty S600, hit the market. They were different from the big American sedans or even the established Japanese models. They were small, efficient, and fun. But the real jackpot came in 1972 with the launch of the Honda Civic. Soichiro's team had developed an ingenious new engine technology called CVCC, Compound Vortex Controlled Combustion, which made the Civic meet the strict US emission standards of the 1970s without a catalytic converter. While Detroit's giants were struggling to make clean engines to comply with the Clean Air Act, little Honda had cracked the code. The Civic got great gas mileage just as the world faced the oil crisis, and it ran clean. It was the right car at the right time. The Civic became a massive hit globally. In America, its sales took off like a rocket, even becoming the #1 selling car in the US at one point in the small car category. Honda suddenly went from newcomer to a major player in automobiles. By 1973, just 25 years after its founding, Honda Motor Co. was so successful internationally that they decided to open a production plant in the United States, a nearly unthinkable move for a Japanese company back then. Think about the irony. The same country that bombed Suichiro's factory to smithereens in World War II was now welcoming his company to build cars on their soil because Americans loved his products. Suichiro Honda retired in 1973 as president of Honda on the 25th anniversary of the company. He stepped down at the top, with Honda firmly established as a global automotive and motorcycle powerhouse. People magazine later called him the Japanese Henry Ford. But in truth, he was one of a kind. In his lifetime, he saw his company grow from a tiny shack to a multi-billion-dollar multinational. More importantly for him, he saw ideas that once lived only in his head, the cheap motorbike, the small car that could beat the big guys, become reality for millions of customers. Even after retirement, Suichiro stayed on as a supreme advisor and kept tinkering in workshops until his final days. He pursued hobbies like hang gliding and painting, living life with the same zeal he brought to business. He never stopped moving, never stopped dreaming, right up until he passed away in 1991, leaving a legacy that's visible every time you see a Honda logo. So what can you take away from this incredible journey? Let's break down the key lessons from Suichiro Honda's life that you can apply to your own entrepreneurial path. Number 1, persistence in the face of failure. Suichiro Honda failed hard and often. His first factory output was 90% unusable. His plants were bombed to rubble, yet he never saw failure as the end. He saw it as a lesson. Remember his words, success is 99% failure. Every setback was just one step closer to getting it right. When you hit a wall, don't turn around. Climb over it or break through it. Most businesses face early failures. About 50% of startups fail within 5 years. But the ones that succeed are the ones that keep going after failure. Take Honda's story to heart and let your failures refine you, not define you. Number 2, embrace rejection and prove the doubters wrong. Honda was rejected time and time again by Toyota's inspectors, by bankers, even by government officials who told him to stay out of cars. Instead of internalizing rejection, he used it as fuel. You will face naysayers, investors who don't bite, customers who choose a competitor, friends or family who think you're crazy. Don't let their no stop you. Let it light a fire under you. As Honda said, instead of being afraid of the challenge and failure, be afraid of avoiding the challenge and doing nothing. The only sure way to fail is not to try. Suichiro Honda pawned his wife's jewelry to keep his dream alive during tough times. That's how all in he was. Believe in yourself enough to stick with your vision even when others don't. Number 3, innovate and play to your strengths. Honda was an inventor at heart. From forging stamps as a kid to creating new engine designs as an adult, he was obsessed with innovation and doing things differently. When he couldn't get good piston metal, he learned metallurgy. When fuel was scarce, he repurposed a radio engine for a bicycle. When big car companies were complacent, he out-engineered them with a CVCC engine. The lesson? Be a problem solver and think outside the box. Innovation is your edge. Also know your strengths and lean into them. Honda knew he was great with engineering but not finance, so he partnered with Fujisawa to handle the business side. As a result, the company had the best of both worlds. Build a team that complements your skills. You don't have to do it all alone. Number 4, quality and customer focus create luck. Honda had an unwavering commitment to quality and understanding the customer's needs. He personally rebuilt engines to ensure they wouldn't fail on his early customers. He listened to feedback, even from his wife's first test ride, and made improvements. He also understood the market. Post-war consumers needed affordable, efficient vehicles, so that's what he made. By meeting real needs and making truly great products, Honda got lucky in the market. But it wasn't luck, it was insight and dedication. Focus on delivering value and opportunities will find you. Honda's Super Cub didn't become the world's best-selling motorbike by accident. It earned that status by genuinely solving problems for millions of people. Number 5, stay humble and keep learning. Despite his success, Suichiro Honda never became an aloof executive. He wore the same white work overalls as any factory worker because he believed in equality and keeping hands-on. He was known to walk the factory floor, getting his hands dirty, and kept learning new things even into old age. He learned to fly planes in his 70s. This attitude built loyalty in his team and kept him in touch with reality. The takeaway: never think any task is below you and never stop learning. Industries evolve, and the moment you think you know it all, you're done. Honda's lifelong learner mindset allowed him to pivot from bikes to cars to whatever came next. Be curious, be humble, and surround yourself with people who challenge you to grow. Each of these lessons come back to a core idea. Success is a mindset before it's a reality. Suichiro Honda's story is extraordinary, but it's not just luck or genius. It's attitude, resilience, and vision. And those are things you can cultivate in your own journey. So now what's stopping you from achieving your dream? Maybe you've had failures. Maybe you're in the middle of one right now. Maybe people are telling you no, it'll never work, or stick to what you know. I want you to think about Suichiro Honda, a poor blacksmith's son with no degree who blew his first big chance spectacularly, saw his factories reduced to ashes, and still came back to create one of the most successful companies on the planet. He didn't let failure stop him. He let it sculpt him. Every time life said, give up, he said, what's the next step? He kept his vision in focus, whether it was a piston ring, a motorbike for the masses, or a car that could change the world. And he did change the world. One invention, one race, one bike, one car at a time. Honda's journey teaches us that the only real limit is how much you're willing to endure and learn on the road to your goal. As an entrepreneur, your mindset is your greatest asset. Fall in love with the problem you're solving. Take pride in your work. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. And when things inevitably go wrong, remember Suichiro Honda standing in the rubble of his dreams, deciding that this was not the end, but the beginning of something new. So now it's your turn. Take that leap, embrace the challenges. When you fail, laugh, learn, and get back up. Dare to dream like Honda did and work like heck to make it real. Your journey will have bumps. That's okay. Every failure is just another step closer to success if you keep moving. Suichiro Honda believed in the power of dreams and persistence, and he proved that one person with a dream can impact millions. You have that power too. So go on, write your own story of persistence, innovation, and impact. And whenever you feel that doubt creeping in, remember this: the guy whose name is on millions of engines worldwide started with less than you have right now. If he could do it, why not you? Keep pushing forward, turn your failures into fuel, and never stop dreaming. Believe.
Now let's learn the incredible story of Warren Buffett.
At just 11 years old, Warren Buffett made his first stock purchase. It was 1942, and young Buffett spent $38 per share on 3 shares of a company called Cities Service. He nervously watched the stock price drop to $27, and when it ticked back up to $40, he sold and pocketed a tiny profit. Sounds pretty smart, right? Except that shortly after he sold, those shares skyrocketed to nearly $200. Warren was stunned. That early mistake taught him one of the most important lessons of his life: patience. In his own words, the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. In other words, those who rush often lose to those who wait. Little Warren's experience at 11 wasn't just a cute story, it was the start of a mindset that would make him one of the richest people on the planet. Early ambition and the power of patience. Buffett's knack for business began even before that first stock. As a kid in Omaha, Nebraska, he was hungry to learn and to earn. He sold chewing gum and soda door to door, and by age 13, he was running a paper delivery service, throwing the Washington Post on the porches and earning more money than some of his teachers. He even filed his first tax return that year, claiming his bike as a $35 deduction. In high school, Buffett and a friend bought a used pinball machine for $25 and set it up in a barber shop. stopped. Within months, they owned several machines across town and eventually sold the business for $1,300, which was a huge sum at the time for a teenager. These little ventures show a pattern. Young Warren was always thinking long-term. He wasn't chasing quick wins. He was building small empires and learning from each attempt. But nothing showed Buffett's long-term mentality more than his approach to investing. After that early stock lesson, he realized that patience pays off. He famously said that his favorite holding period for stock is forever. Instead of trading rapidly, Buffett looked for solid businesses and stuck with them. For example, he bought shares of Coca-Cola in the late 1980s and still holds them decades later. This patience allowed his wealth to snowball over time. Did you know Buffett didn't become a billionaire until he was 50 years old, and about 99% of his net worth came after his 50th birthday? That's the magic of compounding, small gains growing steadily year after year. It's a principle he learned as a boy and never forgot. Buffett's patience isn't just about money. It's also about staying calm when others panic. He saw that many investors spend only minutes researching a stock and then expect instant rewards. Not Buffett. He holds for the long term, riding out ups and downs. When others get greedy or fearful, he keeps his head cool. One of his famous rules is be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. By waiting for the right opportunities and not acting on impulse, Buffett consistently outplays his competitors. His life proves that sometimes the fastest way to succeed is to slow down, do your homework, and be patient. Setbacks, mentors, and emotional resilience. Now, you might think everything came easy to Buffett, but even the Oracle of Omaha faced setbacks and doubts. At 19, he applied to his dream school, Harvard Business School, and got rejected. In fact, an interviewer told him he didn't have what it takes. Forget it. You're not going to Harvard, they said. Buffett was crushed. It felt like the door to his future had just slammed shut. But in classic Buffett style, he kept looking forward. Instead of giving up, he scrambled to apply to Columbia Business School and got in at the last minute. This twist of fate turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to him. Why? Because Columbia is where Buffett met his hero who shaped his entire investment philosophy, Professor Benjamin Graham. Now, Benjamin Graham was the author of The Intelligent Investor, a book Buffett had read and he loved it. In fact, Buffett calls it by far the best book on investing ever written. Now, suddenly he was in Graham's class, learning directly from the master of value investing. And Buffett, he soaked it all up. Chapters 8 and 20 of The Intelligent Investor, he later said, have been the bedrock of my investing activities for more than 60 years. And under Graham's mentorship, Buffett learned how to evaluate companies, think independently, and stick to fundamentals. The disappointment of Harvard's rejection led him to the mentor of a lifetime. It's a great example of how a setback can turn into a triumph. And as Buffett later remarked, not getting into Harvard was really a blessing in disguise. It set him on a new path that made all of the difference for him. Buffett's determination to learn also pushed him to seek knowledge outside the classroom. Here's a legendary story. One cold Saturday in January 1951, young Buffett took a train alone to Washington, D.C. He discovered that his professor, Graham, was the chairman of a little insurance company called Geico. Buffett was so eager to understand this business that he went straight to Geico's headquarters. It was closed for the weekend, but he knocked on the door until someone heard him. A janitor let him in, and Buffett ended up meeting an executive named Lorimer Davidson, who later became Geico's CEO. Davidson kindly spent hours teaching this curious 20-year-old about insurance and investing. Imagine that, a college kid getting a private masterclass just by asking and showing enthusiasm. Buffett often points to that day as a turning point for him. It taught him how a great business works and also showed the value of being bold and seeking knowledge actively. He literally knocked on opportunity's door. Not all of Buffett's challenges were financial or academic. Surprisingly, one of his biggest fears was something very ordinary: public speaking. Believe it or not, the man who would someday charm arenas full of shareholders was once terrified of talking in front of a class. In college, he dropped a public speaking course because of his fear. He said his hands would sweat and his stomach would churn at just the thought of giving a speech. But Buffett knew that if he wanted to lead and inspire, he had to overcome this fear. So at age 21, he gathered his courage and enrolled in a Dale Carnegie public speaking course. He forced himself to attend every session, practice in front of others, and learn to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It worked. By the end of the course, Warren Buffett could speak to crowds without freezing up. In fact, he immediately put his new skill to use by teaching an investing night class at a local college just to keep practicing speaking. And today, if you visit Buffett's office, you won't see his university diplomas on the wall. Not his degree from Nebraska, not the master's from Columbia, but you will see one certificate proudly framed, his diploma from that $100 Dale Carnegie public speaking course. Buffett calls it one of the most valuable things he's ever done. Why? Because gaining confidence in communication gave him the power to lead Berkshire Hathaway to make deals and even to propose to his wife. He jokes that proposing to his wife, Susie, was the most important decision of his life, and he might not have had the guts to do it if he hadn't licked his fear of public speaking. This personal victory shows a more emotional side of Buffett's success. It's not just about numbers and stocks, but about growing as a human. Even the Oracle of Omaha had to step out of his comfort zone and conquer his anxieties to become who he was meant to be. The 5-hour rule, Buffett's reading habit. If there's one habit that truly sets Warren Buffett apart, it's this. He reads and reads and reads. The man spends as much as 80% of his working day just reading and thinking. That's roughly 5 to 6 hours a day with his nose in a book or a report. Buffett once held up a stack of papers and said, "Read 500 pages like this every day." That's how knowledge works. It builds up like compound interest. All of you can do it, but I guarantee not many of you will do it. In other words, the secret sauce is not a secret at all. It's steady, ongoing learning. Most people won't put in those hours, but Buffett says if you do, knowledge accumulates and gives you an edge over time, the same way money earns interest and grows. So, what does Buffett actually read all day? It turns out he has a pretty hearty and healthy information diet. Every morning he starts with a big stack of newspapers. He goes through 6 papers daily: the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, New York Times, USA Today, Omaha World Herald, and American Banker. And yes, he really reads all of those every day. He's catching up on world events, business news, local news, you name it. But beyond newspapers, Buffett also devours company reports and filings. He will pore over annual reports, 10K filings, which are more detailed financial statements, and proxy statements for hours. He once joked that he loves it when a company's annual report is hundreds of pages long because it means more to read and learn. This deep reading helps him spot trends and truly understand businesses so he can make informed investment decisions instead of going by hunches. And then there are books. Buffett is a true bookworm. He credits several books with shaping his life and his career. We already talked about The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, which he read at 19 and still calls the best book on investing ever written. Another is Security Analysis by Graham and David Dodd. Buffett studied from security analysis in graduate school and even wrote the foreword to a later edition, saying it changed his life. These books taught him how to value stocks and think critically about market prices. Buffett also learned from Philip Fisher's classic Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits. He picked up Fisher's ideas about scuttlebutt, which is basically doing deep research on companies, and innovation. Buffett has said that Fisher's book accounted for about 15% of his investing philosophy, meaning he blended those growth-focused ideas with Graham's value approach. Another favorite of his is Business Adventures by John Brooks. Fun fact here, in 1991, when Buffett first met Bill Gates, Gates asked him to recommend his favorite business book, and Buffett handed over Business Adventures, which is a collection of real business stories, and told Gates to keep it. Gates later said that decades on, Business Adventures remained the best business book I've ever read. That's some pretty high praise, and it shows how much Buffett's recommendation meant. Buffett loved how those stories taught lessons about human nature and management, not just numbers. Even Poor Charlie's Almanac, a book of wisdom by Buffett's longtime partner, Charlie Munger, is on Buffett's reading list. In 2024, after Munger passed away at 99 years old, Buffett honored him by promoting Poor Charlie's Almanac as his featured book at Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting. Clearly, Buffett believes in learning not only from his own experiences, but from others' experiences too, whether it's a mentor, a business legend, or his own business partner and best friend. This constant reading has practical benefits. Buffett says that by reading so much, he can make decisions calmly and rationally. He's not glued to the stock ticker or trying to trade every minute. Instead, he's accumulating knowledge so that when a big opportunity comes, he recognizes it. Science backs him up on this habit. Research has found that mentally stimulating activities like reading can keep your brain sharp as you age and even slow down memory loss. Buffett, now in his 90s, is still mentally sharp and witty, perhaps thanks in part to all of those books and newspapers strengthening his mind over the years. Buffett's partner Charlie Munger once said, "Go to bed smarter than when you woke up." That could easily be Warren's motto as well. They believe that continuous learning is the key to long-term success. In fact, at Berkshire Hathaway, they famously avoid impulse decisions. Buffett says, "We don't read other people's opinions. We want to get the facts and then think." He and Munger sit in their office and read. It's as simple and as hard as that. And by reading 5 to 6 hours a day, Buffett makes sure that when he does act, he's prepared and knowledgeable. It also means he's less likely to be swayed by fads or fears because he has a solid base of understanding. He once advised students to think of knowledge like a compound interest account. Every day you add a little more, and over years it grows into an enormous advantage. That dedication to learning might not sound exciting at first, but it creates a kind of quiet drama in Buffett's life. While others are busy chasing the next hot tip, Buffett is in a chair, reading, and slowly but surely getting ahead of everyone else. Living by principles and staying grounded. Despite his vast wealth, over $150 billion as of 2025, Warren Buffett is remarkably down to earth. He still lives in the same modest Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He drives his own car, no chauffeur, and often grabs breakfast at McDonald's for under $4. This isn't because he's stingy, it's because he genuinely enjoys a simple, focused life. Buffett has never let luxury distract him from what he loves, investing and learning. In a world where many billionaires chase flashy lifestyles, Buffett's frugal habits are almost quirky, but they send a powerful message. He once said, "Don't save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving." He lives by that principle. It keeps him grounded and free from the traps of greed and overextension. Buffett also strongly believes in integrity and a good reputation. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it, he famously warned. He treats people with kindness, whether it's his employees, whom he trusts to run the company with little interference, or his partners, whom he chooses for their character as much as their skills. This trust and integrity have earned him a grandfatherly image that people admire. It's why thousands attend the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting each year, dubbed the Woodstock for capitalists, to hear his wisdom and his corny jokes. And let's not forget Buffett's generosity. In 2006, he pledged to give away 99% of his wealth to charity. He's been steadily donating billions, mainly to causes like health and education, through the Gates Foundation. He often says that he's making these donations not out of nobility, but because he has been wired for capital allocation and made far more money than he could ever need. By giving it back to society, he ensures it can do some good. This philanthropic side of Buffett adds an emotional weight to his story. After a lifetime of accumulating wealth through patience and knowledge, he's determined to use that wealth to then help others. It's like the final lesson that he teaches us, that success isn't just about what you get, but what you give. The legacy of the Oracle. Warren Buffett's life is a lesson in playing the long game. From that first stock purchase at 11, he learned to be patient and think long term. From setbacks like that college rejection, he learned to persevere and find a new path. Through voracious reading, he learned that knowledge is cumulative. The more you read, the more you know, and the smarter your decisions get. Through personal growth, conquering his fear of public speaking, he proved that even the most ordinary challenges must be faced and overcome on your road to greatness. And through it all, he remained true to a set of simple but profound principles. Be patient, keep learning, act with integrity, and don't follow the crowd. So what can you take away from Warren Buffett's journey? You don't need to be a math genius or have an Ivy League degree to succeed. Buffett himself says you only need ordinary intelligence, but extraordinary discipline. So start investing in yourself. Read every day, develop your skills, and build your character. Be willing to swim against the tide, whether that means holding on to a good investment when everyone else is panicking or sticking to your values when others take shortcuts. Buffett's fortune wasn't built in a day or even a decade. It was built steadily over a lifetime. And I think that's encouraging because it means that success is not an overnight lottery. It's a slow cooker recipe. All of us can learn from that. So think about Buffett's example the next time you're tempted to chase a quick result or shy away from learning something new. Remember how an 11-year-old boy in Omaha started with just 3 shares of a stock and a head full of curiosity. That boy grew up to be one of the richest and most respected men in the world by doing simple things, consistently well. He read hundreds of pages a day. He waited for the right moments. He wasn't afraid to admit mistakes or adapt when needed, and he treated others fairly along the way. If Warren Buffett's story teaches us one thing, it's this: big success is a sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. So ask yourself, how much time are you spending reading, learning, and deep thinking every day? If the answer is not enough, take a page from Buffett's book, literally start building your knowledge bit by bit, be patient with yourself and your goals. And as Buffett would encourage you, always keep believing in your own potential, because the most rewarding investment you can make is an investment in your own growth.
To watch the incredible story of Colonel Sanders, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there. At 65 years old, Colonel Sanders had nothing. He'd lost his restaurant, was living off a tiny social security check, and felt like a failure. Most people would have given up, but not him.